Hello, my name is Barabara Isherwood, and I'm here at Casablanca for a preview, first view of a wonderful installation by Linda Singer. So I'm at the entrance portal, and I'm just taking a peek into the kitchen area, and wow, this is what we would call in medieval terms horror evacuee, which is a very positive term for a fear of a vacuum. So let no surface be undecorated. Exactly. We like that sort of thing. Yes. It's a completely different aesthetic from the modernist aesthetic that developed in the early 20th century when there was a real pushback against decoration. But fortunately, we've evolved since then, and we can now appreciate decoration and decorative arts, of which Linda Singer is a master. And she's going to tell us all about the different works here.
Hi, Barbara. Welcome to our house. COVID, hello.
Yes, elbow bump here.
Right.
So, I recall years ago you had a number of different surfaces in this house that were decorated.
Just this one.
Yes. And those got painted over at
Well,
some
he
point.
took off one half of it, unbeknownst to me, but that's okay. And so this was what was left. So this is the only thing that was in the kitchen. And I started this time with that wall over there.
Okay, well let's start with that wall.
Okay.
Wow.
So this wall I did in an eggplant flat color, which at first everybody was a little hesitant about because it was very dark. I said, no, don't worry about it, because then I'm going to do all my stencils, and you'll get a translucent feel. You'll feel like you're looking outside even though you're looking at a very dark wall.
Yeah, that totally works right here.
Exactly.
Because you see the door leading to the outside and the light coming in.
Exactly.
And even the green tones that you've used here really work with the shades on the door. So you say this is done with stencils?
Yeah, all of this is stenciled. Everything here is stenciled, and then sometimes I do a little hand painting in the birds. But basically, all the fish, everything is done with stencils. Even these are stencils. This is stenciled. And once in a while, I use a free brush to get a bit of an effect, but generally it's stenciled. So then, after this was done, this sat for about 2 weeks. And
well, let me just back up here and ask you a little bit about stenciling, and maybe at some point we'll actually,
I could do one for you.
Yeah, you will look at some stencils. But how long have you been using the stencil process, and how did it start for you?
Okay, I was a linoleum cutter in art school.
Okay.
And that was my forte. I did hundreds of linoleums, and I printed banners of material.
Yeah, so linoleum cutting is something like a wood cut. And
yes,
it's
I have to dig into and it's a relief. Yeah,
yes, it's a relief
so I did that. And then about, I'm going to say 25 years ago, 30 years ago, my friend Susan, she was working in a craft store, and she said, Linda, I think I found something you might like. And she got this stencil paper, which I'll show you. And she sent me a piece, and I started cutting stencils, and I've done hundreds. And every day I do another stencil.
Wow.
Every day I sit here, and I'll just bring you one if you'd like to see one.
Yeah.
All right, I'll bring you one of the stencils. And you could get a bit of an idea. Let's say this.
Wow, look at how elaborate this is.
And there's many like this, and this happens freehand now. I don't have to draw anything on it to get started. I just start cutting and cutting.
This is the other side.
Yeah. And I will reverse it. I can put it down this way or this way. And this stencil paper will last forever.
Is it a plasticized?
Yeah, it seems to be, like a plastic. And it's great.
And you use an X-Acto knife?
Yes, I use my knife here, and whatever it is. It's usually right here. And I just cut away, and I have hundreds of these. Everything you see here is done with a stencil.
So do you find that you reuse stencils that you've had?
I have, take for instance this stencil up there. I did that 30 years ago, and I had never printed it. And so when I was doing the mask totem, I found that one, and she fit in perfectly. And that was way back when. And a lot of these stencils are previously done stencils, 30, 35 years ago now.
So you can keep reusing
You can keep using
them.
them. And I used to have to pick off the paint because I needed to get the line straight. But now I have these great brushes and I just can go and, like, take for instance, just yesterday I said, oh, Barbara's coming, I'm going to do a new stencil. And I went over here and I did this stencil and I repeated it, these 3 men here.
Now, are these inspired by the art of the Southwest? Or I see you've got a lot of different motifs from various cultures going on.
Exactly, like this stencil right over here I did the night before. I cut it that night and then I put it right on the wall and then I also put it on a piece of paper and then I'll do a repeat design with it. Well, that's a very interesting question, Barbara.
What kind of paint do you use?
Oh, I use these all kinds of these ceramic coats and American paint, you know. The paint is not that expensive a paint. So, this here is a repeat design, which I'm going to try to do some fabric with. I'm going to send this design to a computer that someone owns, and then they're going to print fabric.
Wow.
Now this is that up there. But it's reversed, and so you have a different face each time. And if this is repeated 100 times, there'll be a big face in the repeat. That's the loveliness of it all. Random. It's very random. So this will be one of my art pieces. I'm not quite finished it yet, but that's the basis. And this aubergine is up there too. Everything I'm doing now is inspired by the kitchen.
So tell me a little bit about your motifs, where your ideas come from.
Well, you know, they're from the beginning. As a 16-year-old, when I first started doing the linoleum cuts, I was just doing these faces, and everything looked like a mask, and it looked like it came from elsewhere. But it's been natural to me and to my process. I knew nothing about anything to do. I mean, I had an art education from 17 on, but prior to that, I didn't. And everything I did was just coming out of me. I wasn't looking at anything. I wasn't studying anything. Until this day, I can safely say that all of these masks and everything is totally me just channeling what is out there, all the symbols, all of this. Take this for instance. You see this? If you go down to the distillery, they have a big round metal thing with all of these different religious symbols. Well, I did this 3 weeks before I went and saw it. And this is one of the symbols. And I showed it to Brian. I said, look at this. I mean, it just blew my mind. And I have symbols throughout that, like, where did they come from?
Well, here's the fleur-de-lis.
But that one we know where it came from. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, it's just continuous.
Some of these patterns actually remind me of the Baroque, because in the Baroque period, the motifs were quite large, based on botanicals, and, you know, printed as repeats, often symmetrically.
Yeah.
And
all of this can be repeated exactly, but because of the nature of the stencil, it'll have a bit of a rough finish, and that's the beauty of it. So when I get these printed up into material, it'll be fabulous. I've done a lot of material before. Now look at this. This is so interesting. You see this? This is this guy here. That's like a Japanese Kobudo guy, and then I reversed it. And I got that square, and I used
the square that's right here.
That's right.
Yeah, made the
square
2 legs.
And so when I got that square from the 2 legs, I said, "Oh my God! If I repeat that, I have it on the door there, but not repeated in the same way. Look at how when the 2 squares come together, because they would. You see the little. That will be in itself an incredible repeat design, and so will this." And so will that. That's just the same thing upside down. What can I say? I'm obsessed. This I did in 1970 something, I think. I don't know the date on it, but look at the similarity.
Yes, I see that.
What's the date there? 1987, I think.
Yeah, you've got some of the motifs that speak to, like for some of these, I see both the Southwest
Exactly.
and do you know those masks that the Dogon people wear? They look something like this. And what's interesting about the Dogon masks is if you're a tourist and you go and watch one of their dances, this is in Mali, they'll tell you it symbolizes a bird.
Oh.
But when you're initiated into the cult, which is the cult of select men in the group, then they tell you, actually, this is what it means. That's at your first stage of initiation. But when you reach the final stage of initiation, they say, no, as a matter of fact, this is what it really means. So it has all these different layers of meaning that are unlocked depending on who you are and whether you're outside the circle, on the edge of the circle, or in the center of the circle.
Really?
And it's interesting to see how, you know, you're talking about these motifs just sort of arising. You can think about someone like Carl Jung and the idea of the, you know, the archetypes, and that there are these universal symbols that appear. I mean, you can even look at something like, you know, the swastika, which was appropriated by the Nazis.
Exactly.
But when it goes the other way around, it's a Buddhist symbol.
Exactly.
And you can find it in ancient Celtic art.
Yeah.
So there are these, you know, symbols and motifs that repeat.
Exactly. And I seem to have a lot of it in my work. Take for instance, and the thing I really enjoy about this, Barbara, is take for instance this. This is one piece of it, but it became a face. One of those, you know, from that era of the where in England they had all those people with the hats on, those courtiers, court jesters. And so when I repeated, I didn't even know this happened until I was sitting over there and I kept looking over here. And then when I saw it, I came over and I said, oh my God, this is a face. And it kept, and then this is another face. And this is another. And I was sitting, I was just totally mesmerized by my own work. That's how intuitive it is. And when you talk about how you are revealed, I am revealed continually. This kitchen has opened up something for me that I didn't even think was possible. I'm up for 4 or 5 hours every night. I sleep in shifts now when it's completely quiet here. And all of these things keep coming out of me more and more. And it's arisen in me something I can't even begin to explain. But it's a high, which scares everyone. But it's a high that transforms into something that transcends, I should say, into something that I can't really, it would be very difficult for me to express it. It just keeps happening and happening, and it's unbelievable. I don't even know where it can go from here, but something is just coming through. And I know that sounds hokey for some people.
No, not at all. I mean, and I think the idea of expressing it visually relates to something like the, you know, the concept of Schopenhauer, which that there are things that can't be expressed in words. That's why we have visual art, because it's channeling another part of, you know, the brain, the psyche. So I just noticed over here, this to me looks a little bit Japanese.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And it's odd how I love pattern, and I didn't know what you were talking about before, but everything should be covered in pattern. My wish, my dream was to do a room like this that I could sit in and feel like I'm sitting in a painting, and I wanted every surface to be a pattern. And I knew that it would all work. I knew that it would come together and a person would sit here and they would feel comfortable. They, you know what people say, it's too busy. But I knew that once I got the opportunity, and when Brian said, go for it, do what you want, it took me 2 weeks to really get going. I mean, it all happened quickly. But that just happened. The red on this blue, of course. And then the blue tied in over there and over here into this.
And here we have a representational element here.
And this is a stencil, and all of these are stencils, and these birds are stencils. And here too, these are little stencils, and so it just continues, little paintings and stencils. And over here is one of my favorite. is this. This has influenced me, and maybe I'll show you the piece of art. My main piece of art for my exhibition is this. And this is the, and it was turned over the other way, and then I got this whole piece. So this is very African, but totally me. And I guess I'll show you the piece.
Well, let me just come back to this for a sec. So I would be interested to know, you know, what a person from an African country would have to say about that. We know that, like, taking design motifs from cultures that are, you know, not our own goes back to the 18th century when Western Europeans used Chinese motifs, which they translated into a European mode, and that was chinoiserie. And then in the 19th century, you've got the Impressionists and the Post-Impressionists adapting Japanese art, like, you know, what we see over here, because they're looking for a new aesthetic. They want to break away from the Renaissance canon.
Yes.
And then in the early 20th century, we have people like Kandinsky, for example, looking at Russian folk art.
Exactly.
And later on, we've got Dubuffet looking at art by children or even by insane people. But where it gets a little more complicated, I think, is when you start getting into motifs that derive from countries that have been colonized, like Africa. And so, of course, Picasso and Braque and Matisse were actually the first 20th century artists to appreciate African art as art, because previously it had just been seen as curios, curiosities. And they understood that African art had some sort of spiritual meaning. But of course, by the time the African art got to Europe, you know, it had become basically the same kind of art that you would find in a gallery, as in a mask would be put on a stand.
Yeah.
And in, you know, in an African culture, a mask goes with a costume and a dance and a song.
And it's a whole spiritual thing.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, when I look at something like this, I think it just would be interesting to see from the perspective of someone who's African, you know, what they feel about this motif being, you know, used by someone who's not from that culture.
I would love to have an African person stand here and tell me what they think.
That would be actually really interesting.
And the reason I say this is because I am very assured in what I do and how I interpret this and where it's coming from, because it's coming from where we all come from.
Yeah, well, we
all are related to one man in Africa.
We are. Yeah.
One man in Africa, so we all have African blood, and that's where we all come from. I just happen to be the vessel, the transmitter at this moment in time, that I can sit and come up with these designs, and they are somewhere else for sure. But I don't know where they are. I'm not looking at them. I don't look at any art when I do this, because I don't want to be, when I'm doing something like this, and this art exhibit, which is coming up in the next 4 weeks.
And where's that going to be?
Online.
Okay.
And there might be a spot around here where I might be able to put them up, but they're delicate because they're on paper. They're very delicate, and they're not going to be framed. But they're going to go online, and then people, they're all untitled and numbered, and then people just buy them. It's the same way I did my collage collection of 53. They all got done that way. So I can show you one thing here, and then we have to...
Wow, here we're seeing where it happens. Wow.
So
Brian's back room has been transformed since I was here last into an artist studio. And we've got different stencils here. And I see some have some of your finished paintings, like some of the pieces on the wall have the applied.
And those are just lesser, those are just little pieces I like to do, but there's our woman.
Same motif, yes.
But now there's legs, and this is one of the major finished pieces, and there's even another one that's even more elaborate than this. And this is what speaks to me, and this is all stenciled and hand painted and bejeweled. And there she is over here. And that's the most, this is my...
That's the stencil
that's
for
the
this.
Stencil.
Yeah, it's
and that's the most...
completely transformed.
No, did not draw this, I just did it. And I did it in the middle of the night, and with a pure heart and soul, it came right through me. And I don't even make any amends for this. I embrace, and I want to be embraced for this, because I am the same, including with the indigenous people here. My coloring books and everything, ask Brian, I did one after the other, all the drawings, and there they were. We had every symbol in there. So that's the story.
Oh, well, thank you very much for the tour. It's just some lovely, delicate work here. And as Linda says, all done completely by hand, spontaneously, drawing on that, you know, that wellspring of motifs.
And this is a stencil. You know, it's not. And this is this. Same thing.
Wow. So here you can see with how transformed it can be, with the embellishments and the different colors.
And this woman is in one of the big paintings, and this woman is in one of the big paintings, and now these two will go together in a smaller one. I am very inclusive in my art. I will have something from $40 to $400. I want everyone to own original art. I even want people to invest in original art for their children. All of the things I've made are glorious for children, and they should learn how to collect art, and they will be able to pass it on. Any one of these little pieces a child could enjoy, and yet it has, you know, there's something playful about it, and yet it is still a piece of original art that they could own and put up in their room and pass it on. And to me, that's a very important thing. These high-priced pieces of artwork, you know, people think they're very precious, and they won't let them go for less than thousands and thousands. I'm totally the opposite. I want you to own a piece of original art, and I have many people who only own one original piece, and it's mine.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you for this tour. I'm very honored to have seen the debut, I think.
I think you have. You were the first person.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks.